Good day everyone, we are from Group 6 and today we will be presenting on how neoclassical economics extended by the economic analysis by discussing the imperfect competition and the monetary economics. This discussion based on the chapter 16 and 17. These are the member of Group 6 and my name is Surya Raja and my matrix number is 294190. Let's begin with the introduction. The neoclassical school did not focus on the 5 major questions, but there are notable differences between the earlier marginalists and the later classical economists in areas such as value theory, monetary economics, and imperfect competitions. In this assignment, we will discuss on the second and the third differences, namely monetary economics by Fisher and WICKSELL, and the imperfect competition by Chamberlin and JOAN Robinson. The key differences between the classical and the neoclassical economics value theory. Neoclassical economics emphasize both demand and supply in determining market prices, whereas the classical economics focuses only on supply, and marginalist economics emphasizes on demand alone. Monetary economics. Economists like WICKSELL and Fisher took a great interest in the role of money in the economy than the earlier economists. They laid the foundation for the monetary economics, including the role of money in inflation, deflation, and the economic stability. Imperfect competition. The neoclassical economists extended budgetary analysis to market structures beyond the pure competition, monopoly, and duology, introducing the theory of monopolistic competition by Chamberlin and Robinson. Neoclassical economics and monetary economics. There are no separate school of monetary economics in neoclassical thought, though some contemporary economists are referred to as monetarists. Classical Marxist and early marginalist economists viewed money as merely way over the real world economic factors, assuming that money and prices were secondary to fundamental economic variables. Economists like WICKSELL and Fisher made a significant contribution by drawing attention to the importance of the monetary factors which had been previously neglected but were increasingly relevant to in a growing economy. Successfully integrating monetary analysis into general economic theory, while much of their focus on the macroeconomics, their ideas still align with the overall neoclassical tradition. This section will focus on the contribution of their contribution to monetary economics within the neoclassical school. We will be focusing on two important figures in monetary economics, Gustav WICKSELL and Irving Fisher. First, let's talk about the Gustav WICKSELL, a Swedish economist in Stockholm School. WICKSELL made a significant contribution to monetary theory, particularly understanding the relationship between the interest rates and the economy. Next, we have Irving Fisher, an American economist known for developing key concepts in monetary theory. Both WICKSELL and Fisher played pivotal roles in expanding our understanding of how money impacts the economy, and their theories still highly relevant to current economic policies. Gustav WICKSELL, born in 1851 in Stockholm, Sweden, was a central figure in the development of monetary theory. After studying the mathematics, languages, literature, and philosophy at the University of Uppsala, he took advanced degree in mathematics and physics. WICKSELL combined his academic pursuit with a strong interest in social reform, which was uncommon at that time. He studied in England, France, Germany, and Austria, where he is profoundly influenced by the works of the Baum-Warburg on the capital theory had profound influence on his economic thinking. WICKSELL made a number of important contributions to economics during his lifetime. His primary contribution to monetary economics, however, has been widely recognized. An analysis of the role of interest rates in achieving an equilibrium price level or generating inflationary or deflationary trends. A recognition of the potential role of governments and central banks in promoting in retarding price stability. The early formulation of the saving investment approach to macroeconomics equilibrium. One of the main sources of Keynesian economics can be found in the work, as Keynes himself noted that WICKSELL played an important role in the development of his ideas. The purpose of the WICKSELL system was synthesize monetary theory, business cycle theory, public finance theory, and price theory together. Price level changes. Why do prices collectively rise or fall? A study of interest rates was undertaken by WICKSELL to provide answer to his questions. WICKSELL's theory on interest rate and price stability are considered foundational in macroeconomics thought. He distinguished between the natural rate of interest and the bank rate of interest. Its analysis suggested that when the bank rate is below the natural rate, the inflation triggered as the demand increases, leading to rising prices. Natural or normal rate of interest is determined by the supply demand for real capital. It reflects the balance between the accumulation of wealth, thought, savings, and the potential profits from the investing that wealth. Bank rate. Because of the bank can create credit and lend rates lower than the natural rate, their actions can distort the equilibrium, either promoting inflation when too much credit is extended or causing the deflation when the bank rate exceeds the normal and natural rate. Price level changes either in two cases. Case 1. Natural rate higher than the bank rate. If the bank rate is too low, the savings are discouraged, leading to an increase in consumption and investment. This causes prices to rise due to their higher demand and limited supply. Equilibrium is disturbed and a cumulative upward price movement begins. The price will rise without limit as long as natural rate is higher than the bank rate. Case 2. Bank rate higher than the natural rate. If the bank rate is too high, savings increases, consumption falls. Simultaneously, cost of borrowing decreases, investment decreases, national income decreases, price decreases. With the price and both capital goods and consumption goods decreases, the general price of the level decreases and the deflation will occur. Implication of public policy. WICKSELL emphasizes on the importance of the central banks and the government regulation in controlling price stability. He advocated for setting interest rates in line with the natural rate to avoid inflation or deflation. His theories laid on the groundwork for understanding the role of monetary policy in managing the economic cycles. When demand rises, people increases investment, leading to a boom as the liquid capital is converted into the fixed capital. However, if technical improvements have already been made and no profitable innovation emerge, a depression occurs. WICKSELL also identifies the main cause of the cyclic fluctuations. According to WICKSELL, is the mismatch between the pace of the technological and commercial progress and the growing needs, particularly due to an expanding populations. He argued that the monetary causes played a central role in the economic cycles and advocated for a paper currency system to avoid the limitation of a gold-based economy. WICKSELL focused more on the monetary causes of these cycles. He advocated that the banks set a normal or natural rate of interest which would neither raise or lower the commodity prices. WICKSELL views on interest rates and how they interact with the economics. WICKSELL argued that interest rates are determined by the supply and demand for capital goods, assuming money didn't exist. He also stated that the natural rate of interest is not fixed but fluctuates with the real economic factors such as production efficiency, the supply of capital, and the availability of the labor and land. Now, market versus the natural interest rates. Achieving a perfect balance between the two is difficult unless the central banks take action to adjust them. If the bank rate differs from the natural rate, it can lead to inflation or deflation. WICKSELL also worried that the increasing gold production could inflate the currency, causing the interest rates to fall and prices to rise. To solve this, he proposed moving from a gold standard to international paper currency, which he believed it would address both the scarcity of gold and inflationary pressures. Now let's dive into WICKSELL's theory of forced saving, which was a fascinating important concept in economic theory. WICKSELL explored forced saving in the context of aggregate saving and investment. The idea wasn't entirely new, as Jeremy Bentham had previously discussed in his work Manual of Politics Economy under the term of forced frugality in Bank 1804. However, WICKSELL took this idea further, analyzing how external economics could influence people's saving behaviors even against their preferences. One of the WICKSELL's key observation was the role of interest rate. He argued that when the central bank lowers the interest rate, it encourages borrowing and investment. However, as more money is pumped into the economy, prices will increase. These inflationary pressures force the individual to save more even they don't have want to, as their purchasing power decreases. WICKSELL, along with Bentham, discussed the role of government in facilitating forced saving, particularly through taxation and the creation of paper money. These two factors act as indirect taxation, in fact, particularly on those fixed incomes. When government issue currency or impose taxes, individuals are left with the less disposable income. As a result, they are forced to save money more and must prepare high prices and greater uncertainty in the economy. This kind of forced saving in the critical maintaining capital within the economy for investment purposes. In addition, WICKSELL and John Stuart Mill also contributed in this theory. In his Axis of Unsettled Question of Political Economy 1829 until 1830, Mill pointed out that when banks devalue currencies, it leads to a forced accumulation of capital. Essentially, people are driven into save more as the value of their money decreases, regardless of their preferences. Furthermore, Leon Morrow's explicitly laid on the forced saving theory in 1879, which is later influenced WICKSELL and other German economists. Morrow's work provided more formal framework for understanding how the internal economic forces can impact their saving behavior. WICKSELL also examined the implication of bank loan financing. He also hypothesized that if the new enterprise is financed through the bank loan, pure credit creations, there would be no corresponding accumulation of real capital. This means that more land and labor are used to capital goods, leaving less credit available for consumer goods. As more investment pours in, the demand for consumer goods increases, which in turn driven up the prices of land and labor. Entrepreneurs face a higher cost and are purchasing fewer capital goods than the initially planned, which restricts the economic potential for growth in the long term. As price rise due to the increased demand, consumption becomes more restricted. This thus leads to a forced accumulation of capital. Individuals are compelled to save, which is crucial for future investment. WICKSELL emphasizes that real saving is unnecessary for investment, but this saving is enforced through the price increases. Essentially, inflation forces individuals to save even if they don't want to, ensuring that capital is available for future investment. WICKSELL theory of forced saving provides an important insight on how monetary policies and economic conditions can shape the behavior of consumers, even when they prefer to spend rather than the saving. It highlights the crucial role of the central banks and government interest rates in driving saving patterns within an economy. And thank you for your attention, and now I will pass it on to my group mates to continue presentations.
Good morning, my name is Chua Singing, metric number 298906. Now I'm going to introduce one economist called Irving Fisher and explain how he extended the economic analysis. First of all, Irving Fisher born in 27 February 1867 in New York. He was a Yale mathematician at first and then turned into an economist. He wrote and published many maths textbooks, but unfortunately he was suffered from tuberculosis at his young age. This made him to focus on his health. He wrote books about staying healthy and living longer. His own struggles inspired him to help others. Before World War I, he got about $1 million from invented the visible card index system. Then he invested the money into stock market and successfully grew to about $9 million, but at last all the money was lost in the crash of 1929. He was also responsible for introducing the concept of monetary in neoclassical school beside fiscal policy. These are a few of his publications. The most popular book of him is The Money Illusion. This book talks about inflation and deflation. The main concept of this book argues that individuals often fall prey to the illusion that nominal changes in income or wealth represent actual gains or losses, overlooking the impact of inflation on purchasing power. Fisher introduced three theories, which are theory of interest rate, the quantity of theory of money, and monetary policy. We will first look into the theory of interest rate. The rate of interest, which published at 1906, is the first version of the theory which talks about how the interest rates are determined. He then introduced a second version at 1930 called the theory of interest. He realized that there is two factors that interacting to determine the interest rate, which are the impatience rate and the investment opportunity rate. Impatience rate shows the community willingness to prioritize present consumption over future consumption. Community will value both of them and decide the trade-off depends on how impatient it is. The less impatient, one is more willing to save, so he will have more future consumption than present consumption. While the more impatient, the lesser the willingness to save, so the relative value of present consumption is lower now. This is because when society already has a lot of present consumption compared to future consumption, the additional benefit gained from increasing present consumption becomes smaller. This is what means by lower relative value. The second factor that determines the interest rate is the investment opportunity rate. It is determined by real factors such as quantity and quality of resources, and the state of technology. It represents the rate of return on investment. There will be two extreme cases in the interest rate determining process, where the first one is society could use all the resources to produce goods for present consumption only, while the other extreme is to keep present consumption zero and use all the resources to produce capital. But when society moves from all present consumption to zero consumption, diminishing marginal return will happen because people decrease their present consumption to increase investment. This will cause larger future consumption, so the rate of return on investment falls. According to Fisher, his principle of diminishing marginal returns tells that the more we invest and postpone our gratification, the lower the investment opportunity rates become, but the greater the impatient rate. The more we spend and hasten our gratification, the lower the impatient rates become but the higher opportunity rate. Which means if we save more now, the society will get less and less future consumption from each additional unit of present consumption forgone. Diminishing returns to capital result in declining rate of return on investment. Second, as present consumption declines and future consumption rises, the relative value of present consumption at the margin rise. In other words, society values present consumption relatively more than previously because it has less present consumption than before. The equilibrium interest rate we'll achieve at the rate of return on investment is equal to the investment opportunity rate. The rate depends on two things, which are how much future benefit society can get by saving and investing now, and how willing people are to wait for future rewards instead of spending now. The positive rate of interest reflects that people are more willing to pay for present consumption rather than future consumption. Some people will decide whether to postpone the consumption by lending money to earn the interest, while some people will decide to borrow money and pay for the interest rate to consume now rather than later. So the amount people wish to borrow will match the amount people wish to lend. In simple words, the saving will equals to investment. Fisher said that the real rate of interest may or may not be equal to the nominal interest rate. It depends on expected rate of inflation. For example, when the expected inflation rate is 4%, while the real rate of interest is 3%, then the nominal rate of interest rate will be 7%. As shown in the equation here, long-term nominal interest rate is equal to real interest rate plus expected inflation or deflation rate. So the effect of inflation on the nominal interest rate is called Fisher effect. When the stock of money increases, the interest rate will initially decrease, but according to Fisher, this will cause the price to rise also. So the lenders will increase the nominal interest rate equals to the expected inflation rate. So high nominal interest rate may caused by high expected inflation rate. The last theory of Fisher is the quantity theory of money. Fisher restated the old quantity theory of money based on the equation of exchange. There's 5 determinants of purchasing power of money or price level, which are volume of currency in circulation, its velocity of circulation, the volume of banks deposits subject to check, its velocity, and the volume of trade. Fisher's equation of exchange is shown as below, which is mv plus m prime v prime equals to pt, where m is the quantity of currency, v is its velocity of circulation, m prime is the quantity of demand deposit, v prime is its velocity of circulation, p is the average level of price, and the t is quantity of goods and services transacted or sold, which with each unit being counted each time it is sold or resold. Fisher believed that the most important determinant is the amount of money in the circulation, because it directly affects the price. If the money supply increase, price will go up. When there's more money in the circulation, which is m and n prime, the price will go higher because people have more money to spend. When the money is moving fast, which is v and v prime, price go higher also because money is being used more quickly. But price will go lower when more trade because there are more goods and services available. And Fisher also believed that m and n prime usually stay in a fixed relationship, meaning the amount of money in the bank accounts tend to be a stable multiple of cash in circulation. To propound a cause and effect relationship between the quantity of currency and the price level, Fisher also had to assume that the velocity of circulation and the volume of trade are constant. He said that both of these will fluctuate over the business cycle, but lastly they will return to an equilibrium level. The tendency towards stability in T also depends on full employment equilibrium. Because with considerable unemployment, an increase in M might very well increase T instead of P. The volume of trade also grows in the long run with the changes in population, efficiency of production, and so forth. Yet in the short run, with a fully employed economy, the quantity of currency in circulation normally determines the price level. Fisher's transmission mechanism explains how changes in the amount of money affects price. People like to keep a certain amount of cash compared to their spending. If more money enters the economy, people will readjust their cash to expenditure ratio. They will spend more by increasing demand for goods and services. High demand will push the price up, making things more expensive. So the more money in the circulation, the more spending by people, the higher the price. Fisher links directly between the increase of money and the price, but WICKSELL has a different perspective. He thinks that money creation will cause changes in bank interest. This changed saving and investment and will eventually cause the price level to change. The quantity theory of money helps keep price stable and prevent big swing in the economy by controlling the amount of money in circulation. One way to do this is by using paper money that is not backed up by gold. But this is the way before Great Depression of 1930. Fisher did not support this idea. He thinks that paper money which is not backed up by gold can cause problems because people might lose trust in it. In his point of view, people will trust money when it's backed up by gold because gold has real value. If paper money is not tied to gold, government can print too much, and too much money in the circulation can make the price unstable and cause inflation. His plan was about keeping the value of money stable by using gold certificates, which is paper money backed up by gold, instead of gold coins. The government will change the amount of gold behind each dollar to keep its purchasing power steady. If price goes up, more gold would be added to each dollar to make the dollar stronger. But if price goes down, less gold would be added to make it weaker. This system can prevent inflation and deflation, keeping the economy stable. After crash of 1929, Fisher saw the greatest cause of deflation and depression as the growth of debts. Fisher believed that fluctuation in demand deposit are the greatest cause of business fluctuations. Fisher's monetary policy was to make banking safer and more stable by requiring banks to keep 100% of the deposit in reserve instead of lending them out. Banks must hold all money in checking accounts as cash instead of using it for loans. The government would help banks by buying their assets or lending them money. Banks could only lend their own money. This would prevent bank failures because banks wouldn't run out of money when people wanted to withdraw. The biggest benefit of this idea is can reduce inflation and deflation, making the economy more stable. To stabilize the purchasing power of the dollar, the Currency Commission would be required to buy securities when the index was below the official par and to sell when it is above.
Hello and good morning everyone. My name is Huzaifah bin Zakaria and my matrix number is 300123. Alright, I will continue for this presentation for chapter 17, which is the NEOCLASSICAL school, the departure from pure competition. For this chapter, is formally developed in 1933. The roots go back to earlier economists like KNUT, Edgeworth, and WICKSELL. These early economists explore models beyond pure competition, such as monopoly, duopoly, and less than perfectly elastic demand. Interest in imperfect competition grew due to a gap in theory between the models of pure competition and monopoly. Even in agriculture, which once fit the pure competition model well, market change and government intervention made the model less applicable. The assumption of many buyers and sellers, homogeneous product, and no individual market power were not reflective of reality. This limitation led to the rise of monopolistic and imperfect competition models better suited to analyze real-world market. Now I will talk about Edward Hastings Chamberlin. He born in May 18, 1899 in La Corner, Washington, USA. He get an education for BA from the University of Iowa, PhD from Harvard University, where he later became a professor. Chamberlin challenged classical assumption to perfect competition, arguing the most real world market operate under monopolistic competition. Chamberlin works parallel Joan Robinson, the economist of imperfect competition, but he focused on emphasized product differentiation and market structure. His framework underpins modern antitrust and regulatory policies. Later, economists argue his model overstated, inefficient, and in competitive market. What is a difference between monopolistic competition and pure competition? So, pure competition is assume many buyer or seller, homogeneous product, and no individual influence over price. And monopolistic competition recognized as a product differentiation where firm has some control over price due to brand loyalty, advertising, or unique product features. Product differentiation, Chamberlin argued that real world market rarely fit pure competition. Instead, firm differentiate product to create downward sloping demand curve. For example, fast food chains, which is McDonald's versus Burger King, sells similar product but differentiate through taste, packaging, and marketing. There is a short run and long run equilibrium. In short run, firm can earn economic profit, which is price more than average cost. And in long run, free entry of competitors erodes profit, leading to normal profit, which is price equals to average cost. However, output is lower and price higher than under pure competition. Unlike pure competition, where firm produce at the lowest average cost, monopolistic competitors operate with excess capacity. Demand curve, which is D, slope downward due to differentiation. MR, marginal revenue, less than price. In long run, firm produce where marginal revenue equals to marginal cost, but revenue more than marginal cost, leading to the deadweight loss. Criticism and qualification. First, unrealistic cost assumption. Chamberlin assumed cost curve remain the same under pure and monopolistic competition. In reality, economies of scale may favor large firm. Next, benefit of product variety. Consumer may prefer differentiated product even if they cost more. Comparison with Joan Robinson, imperfect competition. First, similarities. Both Chamberlin and Robinson independently developed theories of imperfect competition, emphasizing downward sloping demand curve and market power. The difference: first, Chamberlin focused on product differentiation and non-price competition, while Robinson introduced monopoly and labor exploitation. Policy implication: antitrust and regulation. Chamberlin theory justified government intervention to prevent monopolistic inefficiency. Workable competition. Later in economists argue for realistic competition standards rather than pure competition.
Hello, my name is Liana and today I will be presenting about the contribution of Joan Robinson. Joan Robinson was born in 1903 and taught economics at Cambridge University. She was a student of Alfred Marshall but later went beyond his ideas. Robinson published The Economy of Imperfect Competition in 1933, around the same time Edward Chamberlin wrote about similar topic in the US. She worked closely with John Maynard Keynes and contributed to Keynesian and post-Keynesian economics and also critiqued Marxist economics. Later in her life, she became a critic of mainstream economic theory, especially its assumption about competition and fairness. Now let's talk about one of Robinson's most important ideas, which is monopsony. We have heard about monopoly, which is when there is only one seller, but monopsony is when there is only one buyer. Monopsony is a market situation in which there is a single buyer or a group of buyers acting as one. For example, imagine a town with only one factory. If everyone depends on that factory for jobs, the factory has buying power over labor. It can decide how many workers to hire and what wages to pay. Robinson showed that in the monopsony, workers usually get paid less than what they are truly worth. And she also analysed the effect of monopsony in product market and resource market. Firstly, product market monopsony. Product market monopsony is the situation when there are many buyers of a commodity. The aggregate demand curve slopes downward and to the right, reflecting the principle that as a buyer acquires more unit of a good, the MU will fall and they are willing to offer less for an additional unit. If there is only a single buyer, or if all buyers form an agreement to act together, we assume that the market demand curve remain unaltered and supply curve remain unchanged. The supply price based on the cost of producing each quantity, and this cost does not change in the presence of a monopsony. Robinson state two generalization. First, under poor competition, which is buyer purchase a successive unit of good at any one time up to the point where the P equals to MU. And second, under monopsony, which is buyer regulate purchases in such a way that the MC to him is equal to MU. This table illustrates how a monopsony behaves in hypothetical product market. Column 1 shows the number of units both, while column 2 indicates the corresponding price per unit, which increased with quantity, reflecting upward sloping supply curve. And column 3 lists the total cost of purchasing each quantity, and column 4 shows the marginal cost, which is the additional cost of purchasing one more unit. Column 5 represents the marginal utility received from each additional unit. For under poor competitions, a buyer would purchase up to the first unit where the price equal to marginal utility at $4. However, under monopsony, the buyer considers the rising marginal cost of each additional unit. The monopsony purchase only up to the third unit where marginal cost equals to marginal utility at $5. This supports the conclusion that monopsony powers result in fewer unit purchases, which is 3 instead of 4, and a lower price paid per unit, which is $3 instead of $4, compared to a competitive market. Next, resource market monopsony. In a resource market monopsony, particularly in the labour market, which is a single employer dominates as a sole buyer of a specific type of labour. This employer faces the entire upward sloping market labour supply curve, which also represents the average wage cost, which is AWC. To attract more workers, the monopsony must offer higher wages, not only to new hires but also to all existing workers, resulting in a marginal wage cost, which is MWC, that lies above the AWC. Because of this, the extra cost of hiring one more workers exceeds just that workers' wages. Unlike in a perfectly competitive labour market where many employers compete and hire workers until the wage equals the marginal revenue product, which is MRP. Because a monopsonist limit employment to avoid rising wages, leading to fewer workers being hired and wages being lower than their true productivity. According to Robinson, this situation results in labour exploitations where workers are paid less than their marginal contribution to the firm. The graph shows how a monopsonistic employer maximizes profit by equating the MWC with the MRP at point N. The corresponding level of employment is A workers and the wage rate paid is L, as determined on the supply curve AWC at point R. In contrast, under perfect competitions, the employer would hire up to point B where MRP equals to the supply curve AWC and pay higher wages at S. The difference between the wage actually paid L and the workers' marginal revenue product N is represented by the gap NR, indicating the degree of monopolistic exploitations. If the product market is also monopolistic, the value of the marginal product VMP lies above the MRP, and the full extent of exploitation is shown by TN. Thus, the graph illustrates how a monopsonist employs fewer workers and pays lower wages than would occur in a competitive market, confirming Robinson's conclusion about labour exploitation under monopsony. According to SCPGO, Exploitation happens when workers are paid less than the value of their marginal product, which is VMP, which means they are not getting wages equal to the value of what they produce. Joe Robinson agrees with this and adds that under certain conditions, exploitation can be even worse. In a perfectly competitive market, a firm can sell all its output at the same price, so the value of the workers' output, which is VMP, is equal to MRP. But if the firm has monopoly power, the situation changes. The firm must lower the price of its produce to sell more, which means the marginal revenue from selling extra units become less than the price. Because of this, the extra income the firm gets from hiring and additional workers become lower than the VMP. This results in workers being even more underpaid, not just because of low wages in general, but because the firm makes less money per unit due to monopoly pricing. Therefore, in monopolies or imperfect competition, exploitation is greater because workers receive less than the true value of what they have produced. Joel Robinson explained that exploitation in a monopsony is where one employer has power over many workers, can be fixed by introducing a minimum wage through a union or government board. This minimum wage makes the labour supply perfectly elastic, meaning the employer can hire as many workers as they want at that fixed wage. As a result, the employer no longer has to keep increasing wage to attract more workers. Employment would rise and the wage paid would match the value of what workers produce, so exploitation will end. To fix exploitation under monopoly, where one firm controls the product market, Robinson said that the price control are needed. If the price of the product is forced to equal the firm's cost of producing it, the firm can no longer overcharge consumer or underpay workers. And for monopolistic competition, which Robinson believes is the most common market type, the solution is to make the market perfectly competitive. In a perfectly competitive market, firms become more efficient, lower their costs, and reduce price, which can help eliminate exploitation. When a market becomes perfectly competitive, firms grow to the right size, operate more efficiently, and lower their costs. As a result, the price of goods will drop, and this shift to a more perfect market also change how productive workers are, because now they work in well-organized, efficient firms instead of inefficient ones. Previously, workers were paid less than the value of what they produce. In the new system, they are paid exactly what their work is worth. However, this does not guarantee that workers will be better off, because the value of what they produce may have gone down along the price of the product. So, even though they are no longer being exploited, their actual income might not increase. Economists have found real-life examples of monopsony power in certain jobs, like public school teachers, nurses, professional athletes before free agencies, and newspaper workers. But in most cases, workers can switch to other employers, especially if they can move or have different skills. Also, labour unions have helped reduce monopsony power by protecting workers in many industries. And the last one is criticism. Chamberlin criticized Robinson's theory of exploitation by arguing that under monopolistic competitions, all factors, not just labour, receive less than their marginal value. He believed that the bigger Robinson definitions of exploitation only apply to poor competitions, as real-world market cannot ensure all factors get their full marginal product due to adding up problem. Later, Robinson herself criticized the economics of imperfect competitions, admitting that it focused too much on theoretical textbook concepts rather than real-world complexities. She pointed out that data limitation and rapid market change make it difficult for firms to make accurate pricing and production decisions. Additionally, she noted that economic adjustment take time and long-run equilibrium is not fixed. It changes based on the economic cost. Robinson eventually moved away from her earlier macroeconomic theories to develop more dynamic and realistic model of economics. And the conclusion is, we can see the difference between marginalist and neoclassical economists in both their approach and focus within economic theories. First, focus on money. One key difference is that neoclassical economists place much greater emphasis on the role of money in the economy compared to earlier marginalists like WICKSELL and Fisher, while Marginalists primarily focus on the allocation of resources and the determination of price. Neoclassical economists begin to explore how money and monetary policy influence economic activities, emphasizing concepts such as interest rate, inflation, and money supply. And next, market structure. Another significant difference is in the extensions of marginal analysis. Neoclassical economists expand the application of marginalist principle to market structure beyond poor competitions, including monopolistic competitions and oligopoly. Economists like Chamberlin or Robinson apply marginalist theory to analyze imperfect competitions, whereas marginalists mainly focus on idealist structure like poor competition and poor monopoly. Next, WICKSELL contribution to monetary economics. First, interest rate and price level. WICKSELL explore how interest rate impact the price level and can lead to cumulative inflation or deflation when the market rate differs from the natural rate of interest. Second, government and central bank role. He recognized that government and central bank could influence price stability through their monetary policies. 3. Saving investment approach. WICKSELL introduced the saving investment approach to macroeconomic equilibrium, earning him the title of father of the Stockholm School of Economics. Then, Fisher contribution to monetary economics. Theory of interest. Fisher developed a theory of interest emphasizing the relationship between interest rate, inflation, and the time value of money. Quantity theory of money. He advanced the quantity theory of money, linking the money supply to price and output. And third, monetary policy. Fisher analyzed how monetary policy impact economic stability, particularly through money supply and interest rate adjustment. For Chamberlin and Robinson's contribution to imperfect competitions, Chamberlin introduced monopolistic competitions where many firms sell differentiated products with some market power, and Robinson's contribute the theory of monopsony, explaining how a single buyer can dominate a market and exploit supplier. So, we can see that all of these contributions shape the development of both monetary economics and market structure theories. That's all from me.
During preparation of this slide, our group referred to the book of The Evolution of Economic Thought by Brew and Grant. That's all from me and my group. We appreciate your time and we hope this presentation gave you valuable insights. Thank you.